The relentless glow of the monitor mirrored the fatigue etched deep in Chen Mei-ling's eyes. Outside her Pudong office window, Shanghai glittered, a vast, indifferent galaxy of lights 20 floors below. It was past 10, the frantic energy of the digital marketing agency finally subdued to a low hum of servers and the occasional click of a co-worker's keyboard. Another deadline loomed, another client demanding miracles. Mei-ling rubbed her temples, a familiar gesture against the throb of pressure. Then the distinctive, slightly tinny ringtone sliced through the quiet. Baba. Her stomach tightened. She let it ring twice more, composing herself, smoothing the professional mask back into place. "Wei, Baba," she answered, trying to inject warmth she didn't feel into her voice. "Mei-ling," his voice came through, raspy, already tinged with grievance. "Still at the office?" "Yes, Baba. Just finishing up." A small lie. Finishing up was hours away. So late. "This job of yours, it's not healthy. No wonder you look thin. Did you eat properly?" Here it comes, she thought. The script. "I had dinner, Baba. Don't worry." "Humph. What dinner? Delivered cold food again? Full of oil and MSG. Your mother, she always made soup." He trailed off, the unspoken accusation hanging in the air. "You are not your mother. You are not taking care of me." "My back was acting up again today," he continued, shifting seamlessly to the litany of ailments. "This damp weather, and the neighbours upstairs, drilling again. No consideration." Mei-ling stared blankly at her screen, a campaign proposal blurring before her eyes. She murmured vaguely sympathetic noises. "Did you use the heat pack I bought you?" "That thing? Useless. Probably some cheap rubbish you bought online. Not like the old days. Every conversation felt like navigating a minefield. One wrong step, one hint of impatience, and it would explode. She felt the familiar cocktail of guilt, frustration, and bone-deep wariness rise within her. "Baba, I have to get back to work. I'll call you tomorrow." "Always work," he grumbled. "You don't have time for your old father anymore." "Fine. Don't strain your eyes." The line clicked dead. Mei-ling dropped the phone onto the desk with a clatter louder than intended. She squeezed her eyes shut. Why did every interaction leave her feeling so drained, so inadequate? She loved him. Of course she did. But talking to him lately felt less like connection and more like absorbing a relentless barrage of negativity. The weight of filial piety, the unspoken xiaoshun, pressed down on her, heavy as the humid Shanghai air. The weekend visit started with a forced brightness that neither of them truly felt. Mei-ling arrived at her father's apartment in the older Shuhui district, armed with groceries, imported fruits he wouldn't buy himself, ingredients for the fish soup her mother used to make. The air inside held the faint, familiar scent of medicinal herbs and old paper. Books lined the walls, testament to his precise engineering mind, but a layer of dust softened the edges of everything. Mr. Chen Jianguo sat in his worn armchair, meticulously reading the Xinmin Wanbao. He eyed the bags she carried. More expensive foreign fruit? A waste of money. But he didn't stop her from putting them in the fridge. Lunch was tense. He critiqued her knife skills as she chopped vegetables for the soup. Your mother's slices were thinner, more uniform. He complained about the fish being not quite fresh enough, though Mei-ling had bought it that morning. She bit back retorts, focusing on the task, her shoulders tight. After lunch, she tried to help him navigate the online portal for his utility bills. "Baba, look, it's much easier this way. You don't have to go queue at the bank." He peered suspiciously at her laptop screen. "All these buttons, too complicated." "What if I press the wrong thing? They'll steal my money." "No, Baba, it's secure. See? You just need to enter your account number here." "I know my account number," he snapped, swatting her hand away lightly. "I managed complex bridge designs. You think I can't handle a simple bill? This modern nonsense, designed to confuse old people." His voice rose, sharp with frustration and something else, a helplessness he'd never admit. "You young people, always thinking you know better, impatient, disrespectful." The accusations stung, igniting Mei-ling's own frayed nerves. "I'm just trying to help, Baba. Why do you have to make everything so difficult?" "Difficult? You're the one making it difficult. Barging in here, changing things, telling me what to do." His face was flushed. "Your mother would never have spoken to me like this." The mention of her mother was a low blow, and it broke through Mei-ling's fragile control. "Well, Mama isn't here, is she?" The words were out before she could stop them, sharp and cruel. The instant regret was swamped by a wave of anger and hurt. "I'm doing my best, working long hours, trying to take care of you. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is?" Silence descended, thick and suffocating. Mr. Chen stared at her, his expression hardening into wounded pride. He turned away, deliberately picking up his newspaper again, his hands trembling slightly. Mei Ling stood there, heart pounding, throat tight. The apartment suddenly felt too small, the air too thick to breathe. Without another word, she grabbed her bag and fled, the sound of the heavy apartment door slamming behind her echoing in the quiet corridor. Outside, the familiar Shanghai street scene, the whir of scooters, the chatter of neighbors, the scent of camphor trees, felt alien, distant. She walked quickly, blindly, tears blurring the vibrant city into meaningless streaks of color. How had it come to this? Was this all that was left between them? Bitterness and slammed doors? And then he just shut down. Mei Ling recounted, swirling the rapidly cooling coffee in her cup. She was hunched over a small table in a bustling Wagas cafe near her office, the lunchtime crowd a noisy blur around them. Across from her, Lina listened patiently, her expression sympathetic. "He sounds really stressed, Mei Ling," Lina said gently. "And lonely, maybe?" "Stressed? He's retired. I'm the one working 12-hour days." Mei Ling sighed, the frustration still simmering. "And lonely? He pushes everyone away. Wei Guo barely visits anymore because it's just easier not to." She poked listlessly at a croissant crumb. "I feel so guilty now, but I dread talking to him. It's like walking on eggshells, waiting for the next complaint, the next criticism." Lina nodded slowly. "It sounds tough. My aunt went through something similar with my grandpa after my grandma passed." He got really prickly. She found this podcast, actually. Some psychologist talking about communicating with difficult parents. Said it helped her reframe things a bit. Mei Ling made a non-committal noise. A podcast? Seemed like a very Shanghai solution to an age-old problem, probably full of useless jargon. "Maybe," she mumbled, unconvinced. "Just a thought," Lina said lightly, checking her watch. "Anyway, gotta run. Client meeting. Hang in there, okay? Let me know if you want the link." Later that night, back in her silent apartment, the city lights painting patterns on her wall, Mei Ling found herself scrolling through podcast apps. The memory of her father's trembling hands, the wounded look in his eyes before he turned away, gnawed at her. She felt a familiar pang of guilt, sharp and insistent. Maybe Lina had a point. Anything was better than this cycle of arguments and resentment. She found the podcast Lina had mentioned, Navigating the Golden Years, Communication Strategies for Adult Children. With a sigh, feeling slightly foolish, she pressed play. The psychologist's calm voice filled the room, talking about underlying needs often hidden beneath complaints, the need for control, for relevance, for connection. She spoke about validating feelings, even if you don't agree with the complaint itself, about not getting drawn into arguments, avoiding the jade trap, justify, argue, defend, explain. It sounded logical, almost clinical, but fragments resonated. His frustration with the online bills, maybe it wasn't about the technology, but about feeling incompetent. His complaints about being alone, a direct plea for company. She listened for an hour, thoughts swirling. It felt like learning a new language, one designed to bypass defensiveness and reach something softer underneath. Could it really work? Or was it just psychological mumbo-jumbo? Her first attempt was a spectacular failure. A few days later, during their obligatory evening call, Mr. Chen started complaining about the noise from the construction site down the street. "Drilling all day! Can't even hear myself think." Mei Ling took a deep breath, mentally rehearsing the podcast advice. "Validate the feeling? That sounds very frustrating, Baba," she said, trying to sound sincere. A beat of silence. Then suspicion dripped from his voice. "It is frustrating. What's that got to do with anything? Are you mocking me?" No, Baba, of course not," she backpedaled quickly, flustered. "I just meant it sounds unpleasant." "Humph." He changed the subject, launching into a complaint about the quality of the television reception. Mei Ling slumped in her chair. Okay, maybe sincerity needed more practice, or maybe her father was immune to psychological tricks. Her internal monologue was harsh, useless, awkward. He saw right through you. She almost gave up. It felt easier, safer, to retreat into the familiar pattern of brief, surface-level calls and dutiful, tense visits. But the image of the ever-widening gulf between them spurred her on. She had to try something else. The following weekend, she visited again, this time deciding to focus less on saying the right thing and more on listening differently. He started complaining about the local community centre cancelling his weekly Go Club meeting due to low attendance. Normally, Mei Ling might have offered solutions. Find another club, play online. This time, remembering the advice about gentle inquiry, she just asked, "Oh, what happened with that, Baba?" He seemed surprised by the simple question. He launched into a detailed, indignant account of the centre's mismanagement, the lack of respect for traditional pastimes, the dwindling number of his old Go buddies. He talked for nearly 10 minutes, his voice animated, less whiny and more genuinely aggrieved. Mei Ling just listened, nodding occasionally, making small acknowledging sounds. He wasn't complaining at her for once. He was just talking, sharing his frustration. When he finally wound down, he seemed less tense. He even asked, "How was your week at work?" A rare occurrence. It wasn't a breakthrough, not exactly, but it was different, a tiny shift in the dynamic. As she left his apartment that day, Mei Ling felt a flicker of something other than dread. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't entirely hopeless. She started paying closer attention, not just to his words, but to the pauses, the sighs, the things left unsaid. His complaints about food often coincided with days he hadn't left the apartment. His criticisms of her job seemed sharper when he mentioned feeling unwell. The irritability wasn't random, it had triggers, patterns. It was a language of its own, expressing fear, loneliness, and a fierce, fading pride. The shift was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. Mei Ling started consciously managing her own reactions. When Mr. Chen criticized the pears she brought, too hard, no flavor, she took a silent, deep breath before responding. Instead of defending her choice, they were the best ones at the market, or justifying it, they'll soften in a day or two. She simply said, "Okay, Baba," and put them in the fruit bowl. Then she changed the subject, asking about the neighbour's cat he sometimes complained about fondly. He grumbled a bit more, but the usual escalation didn't happen. "Didn't argue," she noted internally. Small win. She began experimenting with other strategies, picking her moments carefully. He was adamant about taking a specific, inefficient bus route to his annual checkup, dismissing her suggestion of a taxi or the faster subway line. Too crowded, too confusing, he insisted. Remembering strategy 3. Acknowledge their point before suggesting alternatives. Mei Ling tried, "I understand you prefer the bus, Baba. It feels more familiar, and avoiding the subway rush makes sense. Your point about the crowds is valid. Could we just look at the taxi app for a second, though? It might be much quicker door to door, especially if your knee is bothering you today." He listened, surprisingly, still frowning but considering it. He eventually agreed to the taxi, albeit grudgingly. It wasn't always successful. There were days when her patience wore thin, when his barbs hit too close to home and she slipped back into old habits. Defensiveness flared, voices rose, and the familiar walls slammed back down between them. One particularly stressful week culminated in a disastrous presentation at work. Mei Ling's team had missed a key performance indicator, and the client was furious. She arrived at her father's apartment feeling raw and inadequate, hoping for a quiet visit. Instead, he greeted her with, "You look tired. Working too hard again. Your face is pale." Normally, she might have brushed it off, but that day it felt like another criticism, another confirmation of her failures. "Can we not start with that today, Baba?" she snapped, wariness making her voice sharp. "Start with what? Stating a fact? You do look tired. And you always have something negative to say." The argument spiraled from there, rehashing old grievances, ending with Mei Ling retreating into stony silence, and Mr. Chen turning up the volume on his historical drama pointedly. She left feeling utterly defeated, the small progress of the past week seemingly erased. A brief, unsatisfying phone call with her brother later that evening only deepened her sense of isolation. Dad's just being Dad," Wei Guo had said breezily. "You know how he gets. Try not to take it personally, Mei." Easy for him to say, visiting once a month with carefully curated gifts and avoiding any real conversation. Mei Ling sat alone in her apartment, staring at the Shanghai skyline. Was she fooling herself? Could communication strategies really bridge a gap widened by years of habit, grief, and unspoken resentments? The podcast psychologist's calm voice seemed impossibly distant. Yet giving up meant accepting this Cold War as their new reality. She thought about the small successes, the shared anecdote about the Go Club, the grudging agreement to the taxi, the moments when an argument didn't happen because she chose a different response. It wasn't about changing him, she realized with sudden clarity. It was about changing the dance. She couldn't control his steps, but she could change her own. Her resolve hardened. The next time a potentially difficult situation arose, a planned walk in Fuxing Park threatened by an unexpected downpour, Mei Ling was ready as Mr. Chen started grumbling, "Look at this rain! Now our walk is ruined. Typical." She calmly employed Strategy 5. "Yes, the rain changed things, Baba. It's disappointing. Shall we try something else instead? Maybe we could finally organize those old photo albums you mentioned wanting to sort. We could make some tea." He blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. He loved his old photos. Suppose so, he conceded, the irritation already fading as his mind shifted to the alternative. The afternoon, spent sorting through faded black and white pictures, turned out to be surprisingly pleasant, punctuated by his stories and only minimal complaints. Mei Ling felt a quiet sense of competence return. It wasn't magic, but it was management. It was choosing connection over conflict, one small step at a time. The call came on a Tuesday evening, just as Mei Ling was preparing to leave the office. It wasn't her father's usual ringtone, but Wei Guo's. Her heart lurched. Wei Guo rarely called unless it was important. "Mei Ling," his voice was tight with anxiety. "It's Baba. He fell. In the kitchen. He sounded bad on the phone, said his chest hurt before he stopped talking clearly." Panic seized Mei Ling, cold and sharp. "Did you call an ambulance?" Yes, on its way. I'm heading over there now from my place. Can you meet us at Huashan Hospital?" The taxi ride through Shanghai's congested streets felt agonizingly slow. Mei Ling's mind raced, filled with terrifying possibilities. She tried to breathe, recalling the calming techniques she'd practiced for navigating her father's moods, now desperately needed for her own fear. She found Wei Guo pacing anxiously outside the emergency entrance, his face pale. Mr. Chen had already been taken inside. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor seemed unnaturally bright, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and unspoken fear. They were directed to a curtained-off bay where Mr. Chen lay on a gurney, hooked up to monitors that beeped with unnerving regularity. He was conscious, but his face was grey, etched with pain and fear. "Baba!" Mei Ling rushed to his side, his eyes focused on her, relief warring with his ingrained irritability. "Took you long enough," he rasped, his voice weak but sharp. "These nurses poking and prodding, and this waiting! Ridiculous!" Even now, fear manifested as complaint. Mei Ling took his hand. It felt frail, surprisingly cold. Remembering the strategies, she pushed down her own panic. "Validate the feeling. Stay calm." "It's okay to be scared, Baba," she said softly, her voice steadier than she felt. "And waiting is hard when you're not feeling well. But you're in the right place now. The doctors are taking care of you." Strategy 4 and 6 combined. Wei Guo hovered nearby, looking lost and overwhelmed. The next few hours were a blur of tests, hushed consultations with doctors, and managing her father's anxiety. He fretted about the cost, complained about the uncomfortable gurney, demanded constant updates, his fear making him lash out. Mei Ling found herself acting as the calm center. She patiently relayed information from the doctors, reassured him when his impatience flared. "Let's just wait for the test results, Dad. Getting anxious won't help right now." Deflected his sharper comments with quiet acknowledgement, and gently guided Wei Guo on practical matters like contacting relatives. The diagnosis came, a minor heart attack, exacerbated by a fall likely caused by dizziness. He would need observation, medication, and significant lifestyle changes. The doctor explained the necessary steps: diet modifications, regular checkups, cardiac rehab. Mr. Chen listened with a mixture of fear and stubborn resistance. "All these pills and this diet?" "Rabbit food," he protested weakly. This was a critical juncture. Mei Ling knew pushing him would lead to outright refusal. She took a deep breath. "Baba," she said, sitting beside his gurney, keeping her voice calm and respectful. "The doctor's recommendations sound like a lot to take in right now. It's understandable to feel overwhelmed. Your point about wanting to enjoy your food is important." Acknowledging his perspective. Strategy 3. Maybe we can talk to a nutritionist together? Find ways to make the food enjoyable while still following the doctor's advice? We can take it one step at a time, offering collaborative solutions and breaking it down. Mr. Chen really looked at her for a long moment. Some of the fight seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a weary vulnerability she'd rarely seen. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. One step, he echoed faintly. In that small concession, Mei Ling felt the ground shift, a subtle realignment in their decades-long dynamic forged in the crucible of crisis. Wei Guo watched them, a flicker of understanding, perhaps even admiration in his eyes. She had navigated the storm. Weeks later, the rhythm of life had found a new, quieter cadence. Mr. Chen was home, recovering slowly. The apartment felt different, cleaner, perhaps, with Mei Ling having organized a part-time eye to help, but also calmer. The edge of constant friction had softened. Mei Ling visited regularly, no longer bracing for impact, but approaching their time together with a cautious optimism. He still complained, of course. The medication had side effects. The low-sodium diet was bland, the IE didn't dust the bookshelves correctly, but the complaints lacked their former venom. Sometimes they sounded almost like conversation starters, invitations for Mei Ling to engage rather than attacks designed to wound. She helped him sort his pills into a weekly organizer. He grumbled about being treated like a child, but allowed her to do it. She learned to listen for the need beneath the grumbling, the fear of dependency, the frustration with his body's limitations. She responded not with defensiveness or forced cheerfulness, but with quiet empathy and practical support. It must be annoying having to take so many, she might say, but it's good they're helping you feel stronger. One crisp autumn afternoon, she found him sitting by the window, looking out at the golden leaves of the ginkgo tree on the street below. She brought him a peeled pomelo, sectioned neatly, and sat with him. For a while they ate in silence, the only sounds the ticking of the old